Hello my friends, it's Bella and welcome to my little corner of YouTube land where we talk about everything beauty and beyond. Big welcome to you. Today, a lot of you asked me when I was speaking about the different things I want to do, about making a video about my past and where I come from. And I thought I would do that today. I'll find some pictures and photographs of how different life used to be, and I'll try and insert them for you and try to explain what my life was like. But before I do that, I just wanted to say I did my video on the hair curler. Do you remember the last one I did? And I said it last, but it drops. Right, that was Monday. And this is Wednesday. I haven't curled my hair again. I haven't touched it again. Now it's dropped a lot to what it was, of course. But this is 2 days, 3 days, 2 days sleep, 2 nights sleep. Nothing in my hair, no rollers, nothing. Oh, apart from the little roller at the front. But done nothing else to my hair. So you can see that is pretty good. It's lasting. It doesn't damage my hair. And I only have to do it the once, which I'm pleased about. I just wanted to tell you that because I know I said to you how the curl lasts. So, where I come from. I come from, and I know I've mentioned this before to a few of you, but I come from the East End of London. I don't live there now, I live in the north of England at the moment, but I come from the East End, and the East End then was very different to what it is now. The nearest thing I could say to the area that I lived in and the type of life that and people that I lived with, if anybody's seen Call the Midwife, that's the exact area I could have walked to that set from where I lived. And those type of houses, that type of living, that's exactly how I was brought up. And you know, when as a child we didn't have much. I didn't have much, my family, but if you haven't got, you don't know. When you look at that program you think, oh, how hard it was to live like that. But if you haven't got it, and that's how you've always lived, that's what you've known. And it was such a different type of life to it is now. But I think a lot of my values and a lot of my priorities, they come from that background. They come from living in like that and starting off my life in that place. The first school I went to was a really old-fashioned type. I'll try my best to put a photograph in if I can. The really old-fashioned type of building that all the schools seem to be here in the UK. And I liked school. I enjoyed school. I was never a great scholar. My thing has always been people. I've always had, even from a young age, I've always had quite good people skills. Academic, no. I'm not an academic person. But I've always had people skills even when I was young. And obviously that went on to older life in my career. It was a fight. I think I was about 7. My father was in the Royal Navy. He was a Lieutenant Commander in the Royal Navy. And, you know, everybody down our street admired him, and, you know, but I think I've told you before, the ones that have been with me a while, that it was a different life. My father was certainly not a commander at home. He was a tyrant, and we were all very scared of him. My mum was one of the first computer operators, actually, to be female computer operators in that part of London. She was clever. Both my parents were sort of, said brilliant, but they were both quite clever. But my dad was cruel, very cruel. And a lot of my time I spent hiding. So although I had that home life, it was, I spent a lot of time in refuge and things like that I used to go to. But the people there were lovely. You don't know any different if that's your life. I know that I've left and I slept in parks, in shelters in parks, just because I've been too frightened to go home. I'm talking about my early teens. Because I've been too frightened to go home. So that side of life was hard. But when it wasn't to do with my father, when it wasn't the fear of him, my life, I loved the East End life. I love East End people. As they were then, I loved that, what we call Cockney, and I'm a true Cockney. I loved that way of life. I loved the comfort, I loved the home, I loved the feeling of the people and the camaraderie, I can say this word, camaraderie. I just loved it. I loved it. And I still do like that way of life, although that particular has gone a long time ago. We had clothes. Our clothes were very often passed down from brother to sister, or in my case it would be like friends, and friends would give back, and mums with older girls would give my mum, and then my mum would give once a younger, friends with younger children, and so everything was always passed around, always spotlessly clean, always spotlessly clean. These women and their homes were spotless, absolutely spotless. And we're talking down on your hands and knees and scrubbing type spotless, but they were, all of them. And food, I'm going to make for you, I'll make them next week, some Whitechapel biscuits. Whitechapel, you've probably heard of all over the world because it's famous for Jack the Ripper, but it's really near that area: Whitechapel, East Ham, Stepney Green, Bethnal Green, Mile End, all around where the Meet the Midwife is filmed. That it was all much of a much. That area was very similar, and we used to make big stew pots, and my mum used to put in all root vegetables and pearl barley and split peas, and then she'd buy a bacon shank from the butcher's at the end on a Saturday night when he was selling them off, and we'd have that in a big pot, and oh my goodness, it was lovely. It was so lovely. I might try and make one of those as well. But you didn't expect anything else. You just expected, and you were happy with what you got. I was very happy with what I got. When my father was away, because then he went in the reserves and he was away an awful lot, I only remember happy times. But when he was home, the fear sort of overcome everything, But the East End was lovely. And it gives you a grounding. I don't expect things, I don't expect life to be put on a plate. I always expected to work for what I had, and to appreciate what I've got, make the most of what I've got. And I do that now. I absolutely do that now. I'm not at all wasteful, because I remember what it's like to have absolutely nothing. And it's taught me well. It has taught me really well. I think I was about 5 when we first got a television. I think I was about 5. And it was just a little black and white thing, and it was a box, and it flipped up and you turn the knobs to turn it on. It's unbelievable when you see now. That's been the first one. I was 15 when we first got a colour telly. Oh my goodness. People down the street used to come in, and who's got the first colour telly, and colour telly, my goodness, you're up there with the Joneses if you had a colour telly. But we did. I remember watching Top of the Pops on the colour telly, and the fashions, and we were so impressed with it, you know. That was the East End. The West End was another story. Now the divide is hardly anything, if at all. But you got the East End, and then you had the City of London, where all the offices were, and the men in their bowler hats and briefcases, and where all the sort of business and commercial stuff went on. And then you had the West End, and the West End was more upper class, if you like. It was the big stores were there, Harrods is there, although Harrods is in Knightsbridge, but and Selfridges and Debenhams, and you know, the bigger shops were there, and all the beauty parlours there. Elizabeth Arden had a beauty parlour there, which is what we used to call them then, and Charles of the Ritz, and Helena Rubinstein. I'm sure some of these names mean nothing to some of you. Helena Rubinstein, and it was different. You went there in awe. Oh my goodness, look at this. And you look at the women's outfits. And you know, my mum used to take me on a bus. And we used to go from the East End. And she wasn't a snob at all, my mum. Not in the slightest. But she used to take me on a bus. And we'd go through a number 15. We'd go through the East End, through the city, and then into the West End. And she used to say to me, we get to a place, I don't know if this means anything to any of you, but Bond Street, Regent Street, Oxford Street, and she would say to me, look out of the window, look how that lady's walking, look how that lady's holding her handbag, do you see how she's dressed, do you see how that matches that? You see how she's conducting herself. And it was my mum's way of teaching. I think if my mother hadn't met my father, I think she would have been a very different person. But he took the spine out of her, really, and she became something very, very different. But she always had that, we can do better, we can, you know, be the best we can and make the most of yourself and look after yourself. And she always instilled that in me. And she was somebody who would have a couple of, not very much clothes in her wardrobe, but they were good pieces, and they're pieces that matched each other. And you know, she always had accessories to match, and even if they'd come from a second-hand store, she always looked after herself that way. And she taught me to as well. She taught me to that there's no excuse, we can get things here and get things there, and that's why I guess I'm like I am too, you know. She made me that way. But I'll show you some pictures of the areas where I lived, and what it was like. And I don't have a lot of photos of myself. They were damaged. They were damaged quite purposely, but we'll leave it at that. But I've certainly got, I can Google photographs that, you know, exactly where I came from, and maybe you'd like to see some of those. So by the time I was 17, I'd left home. I'd got my own place. My father had calmed down a lot because he was getting a little bit older. My mum had more commitment with work. So it wasn't as violent, I suppose, as it was in my young teens. That not so much violence. And, you know, I went out and made my own way in the world. Made lots and lots of mistakes. Oh boy, I could write, you know, a book the size of War and Peace of mistakes that I made in life. I think it, in some ways, my life, my childhood made me I've made mistakes because of it. Because my one thing was always, I would never live like my mother. I would never put up with anything like my mother put up with. I would never allow someone to have their family the way my mother did. But then because of that, I was overly cautious, and I avoided any type of relationship. And as soon as I saw anything that was even slightly human, to be, to be annoyed, a temper about something, just human, everyday human, they would say I was gone. The fear of being her and tolerating the things she tolerated was just too much. The good thing about it is my morals come from there, my principles, my fight for survival, my heart, the way I love and the way I nurture, and that comes from there. Because I know, it made me see what's important in life and what really matters in life. And if I could go back and change it, would I change it? No, I wouldn't. Because, okay, there's different people in my life I let go because I was too frightened to commit. But, if I hadn't had the life I had, if I hadn't been with the people that I'd been with, I'd never have my daughters. And they are priceless to me. Next week I will try and make you Whitechapel biscuits, and I will try and make a hodgepodge, everything in a stew. I will try, if I can still get hold of the ingredients after all these years, but I will try to show you, just for experiment, to show you the sort of thing we had when I was younger, and what we were brought up on, and the music, and oh my goodness, the music. Because I was personally going to marry David Jones out the Monkeys. Tell me if you know anything about London. If you come from London, or if you've ever lived there, or the difference you've seen, because my goodness, it is not the London of my childhood. It's absolutely nothing like the London of my childhood now. It's very, very different, and I don't recognise it. I don't recognise it at all, because all those buildings are down now, and there's big, massive glass buildings up where they were, so the character's not there. I know people say you have to progress, but the character's not there. It's just not there at all, to me. But then, of course, as we go down the generations, they won't know that meet the midwife type of atmosphere, will they? But I liked it back then. So I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. If you'd like to know anything else, or you'd like me to share with you anything else, I'm an open book for you. And I think that's how friendship is, and it's our friendship on here, and our group of people that are here. I want us to be honest as we possibly can, and to be honest to each other, because sometimes, you see the makeup and the beauty and all the other things that I love to do. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. But there's more behind the person, and I think when you follow a channel and you like that person, you get to like that person, I think it feels more of a friendship if you open up and say a little bit more about yourself. So I'm just, that's what I want, really, so that you know the real Bella. And that's just part of the real Bella. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like my photographs. I will see you again in my next video, which I'm not sure. I think I'm going to do skincare next, but I promise you within the next couple of weeks I will do hodgepodge stew and Whitechapel biscuits. We'll have a video doing that. Okay? So you take great care of yourself, and thanks for being here, guys. Bye now.